episode 477 of the DFO Rundown, as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Get in on all the action, World Cup all over the place. Hey, you want to get in on the NHL draft, who you like and where they're going to go? Have all sorts of fun with that at Bet365. 19 years plus to play. I am Jason Gregor alongside Jeff Marek as we record this. Happy Father's Day. Recording it late. Jeffrey, hope you have a good Father's Day to all of our listeners.
You too.
Out there. And the dads who go above and beyond in the role. It's fantastic. It's a very important job. So hopefully you have fun and you enjoy it. And your kids got you something other than socks.
Yes. Although I do appreciate a good pair. As I get older now, I do appreciate a good pair of socks. I remember, can I tell you a quick story? Whenever I hear socks, I remember I met backstage before one of his shows at a club in Toronto called The Government. I met Moby. I was there with Strambolop. Want to meet Moby? I'm like, sure. When am I ever going to meet Moby? And he had with him like 2 fresh packs of white socks. He said, I have an addiction to socks. I have to wear a different pair of white socks every single day. So whenever I hear getting people socks for gifts, I always think of Moby. Oh yeah, you're just sitting there. And he had like these 2, maybe even like 3 bags of like unopened packages of white socks. And I thought to myself, kind of weird, but if you're going to have an addiction, there are worse things to have than I'm addicted to a pair of fresh, clean socks. Anyway, that's my sock story with Moby.
And he would wear a new pair like once and that's it? Like,
Yep.
What a
That's
waste.
it. Fresh pair every single day. I don't know if he donates them. He kind of seems like the guy that would. I'm not sure. I would hope so. But yeah, great sock story. That's all I got for you when it comes to socks. So I don't mind getting a good pair of socks from the family.
Okay. From socks to trades. A few trades leading up to draft week.
Yeah,
and it was kind of a 2-parter because the first trade, of course, was involving Florida. They traded Mackie Samoskevich to Seattle, and they got the 25th pick in this year's draft and a conditional second rounder next year. And then later in the day, Florida took that first rounder as well as the 9th. So the 9th and the 25th and a first rounder in 2029 and a second rounder goes to Ottawa for Brady Tkachuk. So are you surprised that Ottawa gets rid of their captain and one of their better players and does not get an NHL player in return?
I don't think this deal, the caveat here, initially the answer is yes, but this deal is not done yet. Like, this is not a complete deal yet. There's no way that Steve Staios has his team in the playoffs and in the playoff picture and takes a step backwards, even though they move their captain. Like, they will use these picks for something. Like, if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, I think like everybody understands this by now. These are now resources for Steve Staios to go to use, to go to get players. So initially my thought was, yeah, man, that's a lot of green bananas for Brady Tkachuk. But like, that's a lot of lottery tickets. But I don't think that they're just sitting here thinking, okay, we're going to use the lottery tickets. They're going to use the lottery tickets to go out and get players. I don't doubt that for 1 second. And in a lot of ways, this could be actually good for the Ottawa Senators. I don't know that they could have been the best version of themselves with Brady Tkachuk as the leader of this team. Not to cast aspersions on Brady Tkachuk as a captain here, but I think Brady Tkachuk as a player is better as a complimentary guy as opposed to a leader. Now, he's an elite level complimentary guy. Make no mistake about it. But I just don't look at Brady Tkachuk and say that guy's the captain on a Stanley Cup team. I do say that about Barkov. I don't say that about Tkachuk. And now Steve Staios, who, by the way, does have the reputation of being in on a lot of things. Like, Staios is one of those guys that is constantly on the phone, constantly knows what everything is worth, checking value, all those things. He is one of the general managers who does not put his phone down. I don't think for a second that this deal is done. And I think the Ottawa Senators are going to use these picks to bring in a player. What do you think?
Well, yeah, they're going to have to. I'd heard some rumblings around, Brady works hard and everything, but some people felt like maybe not the best captain material. And so, he talked about, oh, you know what, this is a distraction. I don't know why people keep saying I want to get traded. And I'm like, dude, like this is being talked about for a long time.
Everybody knows.
And now the trade finally comes. So I never understood that, but whatever.
Yes.
I think I remember a few years ago, the description I had was takes up a lot of the air in the room at times where it's a little bit about him too much. Whether that's fair or not, I couldn't say, but I'd heard that in a few places. Florida gets a really good player, right? He'll fit in to Florida. I think Florida's probably got too many forwards, to be honest. When you look at it, they got like 11 top 9 forwards right now. So I would think something has to give there at some point. So we'll see. They got 2 first rounders this year, and then you got another one in 2029 and a second rounder in 2030. It's always good to get first round picks, but if you're Ottawa, you need another NHL player. You just lost one of your best forwards. So until they replace him, to me, they lose the trade. It's not even a discussion. They lose the trade until we see what they do. It's like when people say, oh, I got rid of this guy for cap space. Well, great. But if you don't fill the cap space up properly, then it doesn't really matter. So I got to wait and see what happens here for Ottawa to see what type of other players, what type of moves they can make, whether leading up to the draft. They got lots of draft capital now at this year's draft class. So there's going to be no shortage if they want to make picks and trades, and we'll see where it goes. But, from a Florida perspective, like you get rid of Samoskevich and you bring in Brady Tkachuk, and then, you obviously move out some picks, but like they got one of those picks for him. So it's kind of like, you know what, we get rid of Samoskevich and we gave away 2 first rounders for Brady Tkachuk. You're pretty happy with that, I would think. If you're Florida, you're in the win now mode. There's no question about that. Like I didn't think Florida was ever going to be picking 9th, or if they were looking to trade that for sure. So it doesn't surprise me that they're there. I'm not surprised Brady Tkachuk got traded. I will say that right on the front, I'm a little surprised you didn't get an actual NHL player back. And so now you're going to have to move that. But if you're taking those pieces and having to add more pieces, Jeff, to get it, then the trade doesn't look as great. So so Steve Staios, how he uses those assets will determine if this trade looks a little bit better.
Here's one thing that I wonder about here too. They have a lot of picks, as we all know. I wonder about still moving up to getting a player that could play maybe as early as next year, but for sure 2 years from now. And again, this is just based on who they were all over all season long. You know who the Ottawa Senators watched a lot this year? Caleb Malhotra. Ottawa was at tons and tons of Bulldogs games this year. Now, Michael Andlauer used to own the Bulldogs, so there's that. Right. Steve Staios was a former general manager of the Bulldogs in Hamilton, so there is that too. But they were all over the Bulldogs all this year. Like they were at a ton of games. I don't know that it necessarily means anything, but I do think that it needs to be on the table as part of the discussion of what the Ottawa Senators are going to do. They were all over the Bulldogs this year. Just want to have it out there. So they could be, if you're wondering about what's going to happen at the draft and if there's more trades and if Ottawa looks to move up, maybe don't be surprised if the Ottawa Senators are looking at Caleb Malhotra themselves. I also do wonder about the Ottawa Senators and Mason McTavish. We all know, speaking of Bulldogs, we all know the relationship between Steve Staios and McTavish. I believe he stayed at Staios' house after the trade to the Bulldogs as well. Like there's a real familiarity there, and I know Staios has always liked the player. So these are some of the options now that the Ottawa Senators have. And let's not forget too, Steve Staios didn't bring Brady Tkachuk into the organization. Not that you're like, well, we got to get rid of Brady Tkachuk, he's not our guy, but I do think that it is a factor. It's not as if Steve Staios was one of his. So just some things to keep in mind here. I know that Ottawa Senators fans, might feel, pissed about how everything went down, and they feel lied to. And at the end of all of it, Brady Tkachuk ends up getting moved. A difficult decision for Steve Staios. I really do think that the Ottawa Senators can make a positive out of this one and can turn this one into a major league positive. For the Florida Panthers, you're right. Like, their top six got better. Right. And you think about, rolling out lines with Matthew and Brady together on them and Sam Bennett in the middle. You want to talk about a nightmare if all of these guys can stay healthy for a long time, all at the same time. It's miserable to play against. But Florida still has work to do, too. Florida still needs a goaltender. Actually, Florida needs two goaltenders. So there's still work here for Bill Zito to do. But much like we've seen out of Bill Zito, whether it's the Matthew Tkachuk deal, whether it's the Seth Jones deal, take your pick. A couple of other deals, Sam Reinhart deal. Like, this is a team that takes major swings. Sam Bennett, there's another one. So this falls right in line with how Florida wants to conduct business. Barkov is back and healthy next season. And all of a sudden, I think we all expect the Florida Panthers to very much be back in the Stanley Cup conversation.
Oh, yeah. No doubt in my mind about that for the Panthers. This is a big swing for them. I think for a team that missed the playoffs, they had a boatload of injuries. They'll have some guys come back that are healthy. I'm always interested about the dynamics of a team and how things work. And what you said off the top was, it'd be very easy for Brady to come in. Barkov sets the tone there for sure.
Yes.
And I don't think he's going to, ruffle any feathers of his older brother or anything like that. So I will say Florida's always been a team that others didn't like playing. Well, that just got increased even more by the addition of Brady Tkachuk. There's no question about that. And those Florida Tampa Bay games, man, are going to be unreal. Dude, they've already
never mind.
They'll be
never mind the Florida Tampa games, and that's a given. How about Florida Ottawa games? And even before the trade, like, Florida Ottawa games were awesome and violent. And now you have this log thrown onto the fire, Griggs. Oh, man. That first game with the Florida, I can't wait to see the schedule. That first game where the Florida Panthers are at in Ottawa, Canadian Tire Place. Ooh. I want to be there at that one. I want to be there for that one. Those will be juicy.
Yeah.
No.
When you look at Florida, Bill Zito built them into a cup contender via trades. Right, like they drafted Barkov and they had Ekblad and Lundell. Those are their draft picks. But look at the trades: Tkachuk, Bennett, Marchand, Reinhart. You look at, and those are that's four of your top
Seth Jones,
7 right? Seth Jones trade.
Bobrovsky
Bobrovsky was the free agent signing for the game, but
previous GM signing, yes.
Yeah, those big trades is really what built his team. And he won every trade significant. Well, the Marchand one, maybe. Well, they won a cup, so I would say he won that one automatically. The contract came afterwards, but the Tkachuk, Bennett, and Reinhart deals, he won them in a home run competition. And the fact that he gave up Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar and still won the trade that bad shows you how good Tkachuk's been. But just, it freed up the money. They got rid of Huberdeau, all those sorts of things. And so when I look at Bill Zito, if I'm an opposing GM, I'm just trade with caution.
So Zito call it's like when what was the old saying about the late Cliff Fletcher? You shake hands with Cliff, you count your fingers afterwards. Cliff Fletcher on line 2. Yeah, don't pick up the phone. Why is Cliff Fletcher calling me on a player that I may not appreciate? Yeah, I don't disagree. There's a few GMs that are like that. Tulski's starting to get that reputation. Like, Tulski swapped out 12 players, and right now he's 12 for 12. When you look at the players that he swapped out and brought in, he's not always going to bat 1,000. I mean, dude, he's the closest thing to Tony Gwynn right now in the NHL. That's going to go cold eventually. But yeah, there's some GMs where they're like, why is he calling me? I don't want to be on the other end. It's funny too, because the old school way, did I ever mention this here? How Brian Burke, when he first started as GM, used to tell me how they used to measure trades. It's a hilarious story. Berkey said, when I first started, the way we measured trades, because they were all Pirates. Now it's like, oh, how can I help you? What do you need? What can I help you with? Here's my roster. Here's what we're looking at. And it's much more cooperative when you make trades now. Like you can understand the cooperation here between Zito and Botterill on this Seattle, Florida deal. Like you can understand where both sides are at. Berkey always loves telling me the way we judged trades back when I was a GM, if the guy you made the trade with got fired because of the trade, it was a good trade. That's how we were trying to get each other fired. That's the way that we did it. We were all a bunch of pirates. The guy got fired, then it was a good deal. Things have changed, Jason. Things have changed in the NHL now. There's not 32 general managers trying to get each other turfed. That's the way it used to be.
You look at this from a Seattle perspective, and it's at some point Seattle's like, okay, they have the 7th overall pick, and so they're going to get a player there. You can have tons of draft picks and great, but you have to look and say, we need to start being a little bit more competitive on the ice. And if you look at their roster, they don't have anybody who blows the doors off, right? Matty Beniers, Capo Caco. Now you've got, Berkeley Catton's 20, Shane Wright, Samoskevich, like good young guys, 22, 25 years of age. Well, Catton's younger. He's only 20. But I really think they got to hit big on their 7th overall pick here. Like that's got to be one where in a few years you look back and say, really good pick for Seattle. But I look at Samoskevich and I wonder, like, is this just more of the same for Seattle? That's my question. Like, they've got young players. None of them are great yet. And maybe they think this guy will be that guy. But I'm kind of curious here if this, I like the trade because I think the odds of him being better than the 25th overall pick are pretty decent for the near future. Maybe down the road, Jeff, in a few years might be different. But for the near future, he'll give them a better NHL player. And, they're probably not bringing back Schwartz. You mentioned Tolvanen. So they'll change some things. But I wonder, like, they still got to swing bigger here, don't they?
They do. By the way, something we should also point out, and I don't know that it's a factor here, but listen, Mackie Samoskevich went to Michigan, and that's where Jason Botterill went. So I don't know if that's a factor in all of this, but what I do like about it is, I've looked at Seattle. I say this is a team that is built based on singles, just hitting to get on base, just hit a bunch of singles. Right, like that, going back to when Ron Francis put this whole thing together, they were just quite content to hit singles. And it's a team that looks like the motto of the team was, let's just hit singles. Now, we don't know about Mackie Samoskevich here. We don't know how good this guy can be. There's still a question mark there. 15 goals here, 17 goals. We still don't know because he's been playing behind guys. That's why I like it. Because it's not a swing for the fence, but it's one of those, we believe that there's more there, as opposed to just making things really safe. Like, it's interesting listening to you run down the names of the players on the Seattle Kraken. When you just are at bat to hit singles, you get a lineup like this, and a lineup like this sees everybody playing one slot higher than they should, right? Like if Matty Beniers was your second line center, you'd be a better team. Jordan Eberle down a little bit lower in the lineup. Bobby McMahon, Capo Caco, Shane Wright, if they were just down one slot, like Adam Larson on your second pair, ooh, that's really good. Vince Dunn on your second, that's really good. But they have to play one level up because they don't have anyone else. They don't, to your point, they don't have like those home run swings and those guys that are like legit. First, like you get your first line set and your first pairing D set, all of a sudden everything just settles. Right now, everybody's playing one level up. They're one level higher than they should be playing. And that's what we're seeing out of Seattle. And that's why they're both a frustrating and at times pretty boring team to watch. That's why I like this move, because there is untapped potential here. We don't know how much, but at least first indication that Seattle is going to do something different than just trying to hit to get on base. No more singles. That's why even I think about, pick number 7. They make that pick. They trade that pick.
I bet you. I'm going to say they make it.
I think they do too, but still, like, I don't know. They need to start swinging. You know, they tried to get Artemi Panarin. Okay, that's a swing. Botterill's in there to swing here. So I don't think that A, will stop, or B, should stop for the Seattle Kraken. And I think that's the way they have to think, because everyone's playing too high in the lineup.
Jason Dickinson, another name off the free agent market. He signs a 5-year deal with Edmonton, $4 million AAV, so actually lower than his last AAV, which was 4.25. Dickinson's, he's a third-line center who can play tougher minutes against the other team's top guys, and he kills penalties. And he was actually excellent, even with a fracture in the playoffs for Edmonton. Outscored the Ducks 3-1, 5-on-5, was only on the ice on a terrible penalty kill. He was only on the ice for 1 goal against. They desperately missed him in the 2 games he didn't dress on the penalty kill. So for a team that historically has struggled with guys who think defense first, to me, I think this is a massive signing for Edmonton, and I think they need to get Connor Murphy done fairly quickly after.
Yeah, I think everyone thought that this was going to come in at 5. I think most people looked at this one and said it's going to be 5. AFP Analytics, I believe, had him at 5 over 4 years. He comes in under that prediction. Again, you're buying UFA years here. Look, like in a shutdown capacity, third line center, like, yeah, absolutely. You just can't expect any offense, which is fine if like that's your role and that's your slot, but don't expect, offense to come along with this one. That's the story of Jason Dickinson. But listen, you win Stanley Cups based on your depth. This is, one of the stories that we've seen in the NHL, and we saw it again this year with the Carolina Hurricanes. So no surprise they went back. And I think most people will look at this and say, the term might be a 1 year too long, but they got him $1 million under what I think a lot of people thought they're going to get him at.
Yeah. So he, the contract ends in his 30, because he's 31. He'll be 31 when this season starts, 31, 32, 33, 34.
Yep.
So it's done at 35. It's 1 year less than the McCarron deal, a little bit higher of an AAV, but he's obviously been way more productive. I just, when you look at, and I know that the Mike Babcock announcement's going to come either Monday or Tuesday. And they'll have a press conference. And I've argued for a while, really since the season ended, because originally I thought they would keep their head coach Knobloch, but obviously they didn't. That the most important moves this offseason are going to come at the general manager, Stan Bowman. This was a signing. I really think they got to get Connor Murphy. Now we'll see what they do for a trade for Darnell Nurse. What are they going to do in goaltending? Can they get a right shot center for their fourth line potentially to kill penalties? So this will be an important, I think, summer for Bowman, but this is a really good first step to give Dickinson signed, because on a team that has they've been looking for a third line center. Now, could Dickinson channel his inner Jordan Stahl, who came out of nowhere and scored all those goals? Like, that's what you never know, right? Like you sign your third liner to know that he can be good defensively. He can kill penalties. That's his role. And then maybe he had 3 points, 2 goals in 4 games against the Ducks. He was actually really good offensively in those short period of time. So, that's always a bonus. But I just think for a team whose identity has never been consistent defensively, this is a big sign.
The only thing that I wonder about here, because we've heard a lot coming out of the Oilers organization of recent note about having more of an analytics slant and having more decisions made based on evidence that the analytics group will provide to Stan Bowman. I'm not so sure that this is the best example of it. I'm not so that a robust analytics department would look at and I'm not saying that it's the wrong move. I'm just saying, we heard a lot of talk about how analytics is going to have the lead here. I don't look at this deal and say this one was led by the analytics department. And again, I still think that the Nurse deal, not necessarily who they get, but what they do with the cap space savings that they get, and I'm assuming they will get some when they make the Darnell Nurse deal, that will be the evidence of how serious all of this talk has been over the last few weeks around the Oilers. I just don't look at this one and go like, oh yeah, like that's something that like, Barnes in Washington or Tulsky and Dello in Carolina, or, take your pick, Eric Parnas and Colorado would have made. I don't look at it that way.
Now, see, it's interesting you mentioned that, because when you're Jason Dickinson on a very bad Chicago team for the last few years, I think it's tough to, like, if you go after the public models of analytics, it's not going to look good, because he's playing lots of minutes, and lots of times he's playing lots of minutes against the other team's best players. If you look at if you go to Puck IQ and you look at how much of his time, like with Chicago this year, 48% of his minutes were against elite players. 39, like those are really high percentages on a team that doesn't. So not only is he playing that many high minutes, he's playing it with basically an extremely young defense core for the most part, and no Spencer Knight prior to this year. I'd love to talk to an analytics guy to say, what do you take from the analytics when you look at a player like that who's clearly on a bad team, and he's taken way more tough matchups than most guys do, and he's got, okay, so what are you looking at? I think you probably have to look at the film more than just even the raw numbers of shot attempts and high danger chances and all that, because for him, he could be making the right plays, but because you're on a bad team, your teammates aren't making the right play, and so your numbers are going to look terrible.
Yeah. You can capture that. It's funny because I had Tulsky on my show this week, and one of the things that I asked him about were public models. And I've always been told, grain of salt, because everything that the teams have, I don't want to say that they're light years past what we see by way of public models, but I've always been told, like, hey, take it all with a grain of salt. We're well past that. And I asked Tulsky that, and he said, look, the main thing that we have is more information and more data points. Essentially, we have more things to evaluate based on other than what you see in the public models. That is why I don't disqualify public models. I have a lot of respect for it, and you have to use it as a tool that we all have. And if any team wants to make their models public, by all means, I would encourage them to do so. But I always kind of look at the public models and just say, okay, that's good, but that is what's the best way to phrase it, Griggs? Ferrari staging post, because the teams are past that and they're making decisions based on the volume of information that they collect. That's why, like, as far as public models, I kind of go like important, but important.
Yeah, no, like I've seen clear sight analytics numbers compared to like natural stat trick or money puck, and I'm telling you, it's very different in a lot of cases, right? And so clear sight is a private one. It's not public available. I've seen those numbers over the years in certain cases, and it's not discounted. It's a good baseline. Like, it's rare that you'll see a public one that shows a guy is really good, and then the private ones show that he's awful. The private ones just might suggest he's not as good as the public model suggest. And conversely, some guys aren't as bad as the public model will try to make you believe, because you have to dig deeper down, and it all comes down to the different data points that you have on it. And so, because I talk to a lot of analytics guys who think Dickinson's actually a very good usage of analytics once if you dig deeper than the publicly available ones.
It is interesting. Like, ultimately, we're still so far behind what the other sports have. And like, I keep saying this, like, don't let the cement harden around any ideas around analytics just yet, because this is still in the infancy stage of how we're measuring the game. And there's still a lot that we don't know. We're, I'm assuming, going down the right path. And I think we're all there. Just don't let the cement harden. Just like, this is all temporary staging post stuff.
I remember I had Rob Volman, who's highly regarded in the analytics on the show.
I miss his books. And Rob, I miss his books.
Yeah, and Rob talked about how he felt at that time, everything they were tracking, there was still about 36 to 38% of the game that was unpredictable because of how a puck bounces here or there, and luck factors in. And a lot of people don't like hearing that, because they're like, whoa, I got to make $1 million decision, and there's still a fair amount of luck. Like baseball, every play starts at the exact same point. It doesn't matter. Every time the pitch starts on the mat. Now, you might have a lefty, you might have a righty, you might have a guy who throws a cutter, splitter, all that stuff, but you're starting at the exact same point. Hockey doesn't have that, right? At all. And it's so interactive and moving that the analytics, I think, are good that they've caught up to it, and they're always looking for more, but there's always going to be a fair amount of unpredictability that comes into it that will infuriate people, I think, at times, if they want to feel that they need predictability.
The one area, I don't want to go too deep into this one. This is for a good summer pod, but we have other stuff to get to. But the one area that I'm waiting for is information that demonstrates who's actually a good passer. Because we've always just used assists as the proxy. Whoever has the most assists, they must be a good passer. Like, that's the proxy that we've used. Is that true? Is that true? That the best passers always have the most assists? Is that true?
I don't know. But I do think they're better now because they have more on, pass attempts, passes completed, right? Yes. Like, we see that, zone exits are part of it for sure. Now, a lot of that's also part of how many of them are when you exit the zone and there's no one pressuring you. Well, I would hope as an NHL player, you can put it on the tape 100% of the time.
Bingo. That's what I'm saying. Like, how many sticks you're putting it through? How many sticks you're putting it past? Yeah. Who's against you? What's in your way? What options do you have to make that play? I think once that becomes a little more clear, we'll have a better idea of who actually is a good passer. Because we've always just said, this guy had like 90 assists this year. He's the best passer in the NHL. That's probably not true.
If you had to pick right now, who do you think's the best passing forward and best passing defense?
Just based on what I see, best passing forward is Leon Draisaitl.
I would agree. Because he can do it on
also. Yes, I would also put in that conversation Robert Thomas as far as being one of the best passers and creative playmakers. Yeah, doesn't always end up in the goal. Kucherov, of course, yes. But Robert, I think that's where a lot of value with Robert Thomas. But I again, not having anything in front of me and just looking, I go, who's the best passer you've seen? Leon Draisaitl. Draisaitl for me.
Because what he can do on his forehand and his backhand is ridiculous. We're less than 10 days away from free agency.
Yep.
And the biggest name is still Alex Tuch. And as it gets closer, Jeff, like, what do you think is Tuch? Like, is he going to get the max 7 years, 10 plus mil? What do you think his deal ultimately is going to be? And if it's not Buffalo, where do you think he lands?
First of all, it does very much sound like it's out west, right? Like, if it's not going to be the Buffalo Sabres, it's going to be west. I think all season long we had wondered about the Edmonton Oilers and if there could be a fit there. Could you see a return to the Vegas Golden Knights? Listen, the one thing about Vegas and they've done this consistently, they make a hash out of their salary cap during the year and they don't care because they clean it all up in the summer. Like, that's just the way that Kelly McCrimmon does it. And it's worked, right? Like, by the end of the season, you're like, oh man, the Vegas Golden Knights are screwed now. And then, they got out of that trap. I don't think that happens, but it does very much sound like this is a player going west, and the one team that is right there and can probably use at least one more veteran player is Utah. Would Utah make some sense to you, Jason Gregor? Because it would for me. Like, they have that young core that's growing, and we all know about, Logan Cooley and company and all those other players, Dane Wyatt and Naginla and Simashev and Cole Baudouin, like good young players coming here too. But is Utah not a team that maybe needs one more veteran guy? That's a team that I wonder about here. And as always, I wonder about the Los Angeles Kings.
Well, the Kings I could see because he's not a center, but they want to replace Kopitar, right? So he's not a center, but your points, everything else. I look at Utah and I'm like, I really like Logan Cooley. Nick Schmaltz, like, those guys are both signed long-term, I think till 2034, if I'm not mistaken. But if you got, Paterka and Dylan Guenther, and now you're going to get another winger at 10 plus mil. Those guys are at 7. I really like Dylan Guenther's contract, right? I'm not as much in love with the Paterka one, but I'd like it, but then I got to move somebody out, right? Because I just think that there'll be too forward strong without I like their defense. Obviously, I really like Sergachev. Uyghur, Durs, they got pretty good defense, but you might all of a sudden have too much tied up front if you go get him. So if there's another move coming, I like that Utah one. I think LA is definitely one that could make sense to me for sure. I know a lot of people have asked about Edmonton, and I'm like, well, unless you're moving Darnell Nurse out and basically freeing out everything, I just don't see how it happens.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. I'm just like, does very much sound like it's going to be West. Like that's going to be the decision for Tuch and his family. And those to me would be the ones that make the most sense. I would love to see, just by the way, as an aside, I would love to see him with Edmonton. I really would love to see him with Edmonton. To me, it's a fit. You just can't make the dollars and cents work.
Would Dallas ever do Tuch in and Robertson out? Like, is that like Robertson's younger by like 3-4 years, right? Like, I'm not sure that's like, I think they'd be better off just keeping Richard Robertson then.
I don't, it's interesting. Dave Pagnotta just, talked with Jim Nail, and he talked about how there's no pressure points right now when they're going through the process. And it's like, there is a pressure point. It's arbitration. You don't want the player to get into that room, and then you don't want that player, because he's 1 year away from UFA, take the one year prescription here from the arbitrator and then walk away after a season, and you got feathers. So to me, that there is still a pressure point, because you don't want to get to that place where Robertson gets into the arbitration room, because who knows what number that is going to be when you look at the production of Jason Robertson. I keep saying, like, if they were close, the deal would have been done by now. I've been saying this since last summer. The deal was close, they would have been there. They're still not there. I do think that Dallas has come up. I do think that Dallas is a lot quicker. The belief has always been that he wants the Rantanen contract, and Dallas was like, we're more comfortable with the Harley contract. And we thought, okay, it's going to come in somewhere in the middle. But it seems as if Dallas has gone higher than Robertson has gone lower as this season has gone on. And if they do a number, unless they move other money around, if they get to a number that makes Maverick Bourque vulnerable for an offer sheet, someone's going to do it, and someone should do it. If it's Maverick Bourque, like the sidecar to the Jason Robertson story is the Maverick Bourque situation. Here's a young guy, can play center, can play wing, 20 goals. He's ready for that next in his career. Are they going to be able to have enough money to sign him if they get to an uncomfortable number with Jason Robertson? That is very much a shadow on this Jason Robertson situation. Although, could I see Tuch there? Yeah, I do think, however, you want another center with speed. Like this year, they got really, really slow when they started to run into injuries in the playoffs. That's why one of the first names that popped to me when Larkin was available is like, oh, he would fit good on Dallas. Oh, he'd fit good on Dallas, and he could get a raise automatically by playing in Texas in the no tax state. But we saw when Rupe Hintz went out, that team got slow fast. And it sounds, by the way, like Jamie Benn is coming back. That seems the way the winds are blowing here, which is, I think, a surprise for some people. Because I think the Dallas great about this. Like, doesn't Dallas need to do something? Like, can you really just run the same thing back?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think something, but I don't think they have to do like major, because, obviously Robertson is a big decision, right? So to me, like if he's moving out, then you're making a significant move, right? It's going to be a trade. So, but if he's returning, I still like Tyler Seguin has 1 year left at over $9 million.
Yes.
And it was coming out like they had some key injuries in Dallas again. Now, the problem is that they're an older team, so you might argue that they'll have more injuries because of that overall. So I think Dallas needs to find a way to to just add a little bit of youthfulness to their lineup, because not always, but in a lot of cases, your youth guys just are available a little bit more often.
Yeah, like a Logan Stankoven. Oops.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hey man, that like a trade can work.
Got your
both
rant
ways.
in it. I know it got your rant, and it got your Miko rant.
Yeah, I make that trade all day.
I just kid because I kid, but like that's where again, like I'll come back to Maverick Bourque and all this because I agree with you. I think Maverick Bourque needs to have a more prominent position in the Dallas Stars lineup next season. Like, look, one name that we haven't talked about there who is just like an absolute stud is Wyatt Johnston too. So it's not as if like they're bereft of younger players. I just look at like, man, so much rests here on this Maverick Bourque decision. And if they price themselves out of Maverick Bourque with Jason Robertson, what have you really done? Yeah,
no, that's fair. We're going to get to the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're going to talk about the Hurricanes and what a parade and more. But first, let's bring in Pat Puff to the pod. Patty, how you doing, my man?
Doing great. First and foremost, happy Father's Day to both of you and everyone listening. Of course. Today is Buy or Sell, a presentation of Bet365. The worst thing about hockey season, that at some point every year it ends. The good news is that Bet365 still has plenty of games, just none that require you to lace up your skates. At Bet365 Casino, you can choose between hundreds of slots, live tables, and your favorite games. Greg's, they have Blackjack Switch on there. I checked. But maybe your second favorite game to hockey must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. First question I have for you guys today. I'm wondering if the era of shorter rebuilds is here, with prospects coming in and having a higher impact on teams, and with the salary cap going up, teams can bigger swings on players quicker. But on the flip side, that also makes it easier for the teams that are doing well and are making the playoffs. So I guess the question is, buy or sell, are rebuilds going to get shorter because of the salary cap rise? Greg's, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the teams that are going in the rebuilds. We're going to start to, I think, over the next 4 years, we're going to have a bigger separation in the haves and the have-nots. And I think we've started to see, like, think about just in the last 15 years, how many organizations have gone 10 plus years without playoffs, right? Because the league's expanded up to 32 teams, and there's talk it might go to 34 in the near future. So salary cap,
yes,
I don't see it change it. I think rebuilds are actually, on average, are probably going to get longer.
I think a lot of it comes down to when teams decide to rebuild. We've seen teams like hang on too long, and then the rebuild takes forever. I think case in point there is the Chicago Blackhawks that we're still seeing and still haven't, made the postseason. Like, they hung on to it all too long. You can understand ownership and the pressure of just getting into the playoffs and that revenue, knowing full well in the background, like one day, the bartender is going to say last call, someone's going to turn the lights on and a bill is going to arrive. Like, it happens to every team. I should say it happens to most teams. I think honestly, like, I don't know, like, I agree with what Jason says. Like, there's going to be a division here. Like, you're going to see the shrinking of the middle class team in the NHL. It's going to be, you're in a rebuild or you're shooting for the Stanley Cup, and the middle class is gone. I just think that it always comes down to when you decide to do it, and everybody has different pressures. There are some markets that, like Montreal, for example, and I think a lot of this, I think this was surprising to people. Montreal has been a successful rebuild, and I think a lot of it is too, they were honest with their fan base, and the fan base was patient. And the fan base saw development along the way, and the fan base was quite content to say, well, you know what? The kids are getting better, so we're still going to hang on to this thing, and we're going to still go along for the ride. There are other fan bases that won't. And I'll look at the Winnipeg Jets there, because the Jets were close, right? It wasn't that long ago that they looked over the cliff and said, what does it look like without Hellebuck and Scheifele? We all thought they were gone, guys. And we all thought that they were gone. Like, Chevy's got to make a move here. And then all of a sudden, these matching 8-year contracts appear because they looked over the cliff and said, this doesn't look good. We need butts in the seats. We need a full building. We need a large building to begin with. So we're going to postpone any rebuild. And these massive contracts appeared. So some teams have the luxury of it. Some teams don't. For many, it's inevitable. I always come down to, it depends on when you decide to start your rebuild. And generally, teams always started late. I think they can be quick if you bite the bullet and say, okay, we're done here. We're starting a losing cycle. Let's start the rebuild now instead of hanging on. I know it's tough to sell the fan bases, though.
Well, and I wonder if that's going to put an emphasis on the next couple of years, because if there is going to be a big separation, you want to be on the upper end versus on the lower end. So this might be an interesting summer if teams are realizing that already. Second question I have for you guys, a goalie that I haven't heard too many people talking about, but we know is probably on the market if the right deal is there for the Blue Jackets. But buy or sell, do you think Elvis Merzlikins will be a Blue Jacket next season? I mean, 1 year at $5.4 million, I figure a team could take a chance on him, but there's lots of goalies out there right now, Jeff.
There are. Make no mistake about it. Columbus, Jack Reeves is the number one guy, and like that's the goaltender that's been the goalie in waiting now for a little bit, and this year cemented him as a top guy. You've heard me go on about how I think he's got the fastest glove in the NHL right now. The guy's phenomenal athlete, outstanding netminder, and so to your point, Pat, that makes Elvis Merzlikins as a co-number one sort of redundant here. I don't think that Don Waddell would hesitate at all if he got anywhere near a good offer for Elvis Merzlikins. And I think it's probably been that way for a while. I don't think that that's anything new. I don't think this will be a surprise to anybody, but if anybody comes close to a deal, I think Don Waddell will drive Elvis Merzlikins to the airport himself.
Yeah, I think Elvis, you just go back to losing one of his closest friends. Sometimes you just need a change. And I think that's been a small factor. The fact that Greaves has now surpassed him. But what are you getting in Elvis Merzlikins? Honestly, I don't know. I really don't. But I look at Merzlikins and I wonder, is there much difference between Merzlikins and Blackwood as far as guys who organizations felt like maybe had more, moved around? And, unfortunately, the difference is Blackwood's injury has always been a little bit of an issue for him. So I think with Elvis, if Columbus is willing to eat a little bit of salary, I think there'd be lots of teams that would be like, you know what? I'll take a stab in this guy, because goaltending from team to team, from year to year, for 80% of them can fluctuate heavily.
Yeah, and we're starting to see teams carry 3 goalies now. And if there's a team that has, one starter and one they're not sure about, you can maybe bring them in for the right price, obviously, because $5 million is a lot for a third goalie. But yeah, it's just interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about him, but we all know he's on the market. So we'll see if he stays.
I think it's legit. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point by you. I think it's a good name to bring up. It's one of the more intriguing netminders out there. Good for you. You're right.
And I have a fun one as the final one. And of course, it's too early to be talking about this, but Bet365 does have some odds on Gavin McKenna's point total for next season. And they have him right around Macklin Celebrini's first year, around the 55 to 60 points. But so that would be my question. Buy or sell? I mean, right now, they're assuming he gets 55 to 60 points. Are you buying or selling on that, Greg's?
Ooh. Well, I'm going to assume that he's going to go to Toronto. So Toronto doesn't have an abundance of top 6 wingers right now. They don't, right? Like they got rid of Bobby McMahon at the deadline. You got Matthew Nyes. You got Nylander. Where are they playing center on Nylander? Or is he playing wing? We'll see. But
he'll play wing.
I think McKenna will get opportunities, but I think some people underestimate how hard it is to get 55 points as a rookie. It's difficult, but he's also going to go on a team where you've got Austin Matthews, you've got Willie Nylander, now you've got Darren Radish. Most first overall picks don't go to teams like that. Like you mentioned Celebrini, who is he playing with? So I would, if he can stay healthy, I think 50, is it over 55 I'd have to take?
Yeah, 55 plus right now is minus 250 and 60 plus is plus 140. So to get in the positives, I mean, he needs 60 points.
Yeah, see, I know that's hard, man. That's a lot. Yeah. I'd love to see him do it, but I'm going off of history. So I would probably stay away.
I'm selling on this one, Pat. But then, like my own bias, I always come in conservative on rookies. To Jason's point, like it is so hard. Never mind 50 points, like to do anything in your first year. It is such a massive jump. Like, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Greg's, you probably heard the same thing from various scouts too. There are some that think he should go back to Penn State for another year and not make that jump to the NHL right away. Now, he's gonna. This is what happens. Like, first round picks, they go in, unless you're like, Owen Power, for example, and it's back to Michigan. The first overall picks, they go in right away. Expect the same thing from Gavin McKenna. But I don't want to, I would be shocked. I would be shocked. So I will take the under on this one, as I always take unders. Even as impressive as he's been in the second half after the World Juniors, I'll still take under on this one. I always go conservative on these things.
Yeah, I think the line's a little bit too high, but maybe this is a good bet for a Toronto fan. You can put $10 on it and cheer for him all season. That would make it fun. But other than that, yeah, it's a little up there for sure. But that's all I have for you guys. Buy or sell, brought to you by Bet365.
Jeff, coming up on Monday, the NHL will announce their inductees for the Hockey Hall of Fame that happens later on in the year. And I think there's two that I think are kind of no-brainers, and Patrice Bergeron and Carey Price. I don't know if we get much argument from people. I think those two guys are Hall of Fame. But after that, there's some names, men and women where you look, you got on the women's side, Julie Chu, I think is probably maybe the most talked about name. And then you've got guys like, Brian Getzlaf, Patrice Eliash, Curtis Joseph has been around for quite some time. The other ones are good to discuss. Henrik Zetterberg would be another one potentially. At times though, I feel like people say, you got to get 4 in. I'm like, no, you don't. Like if they're not worthy, right? They're not, and it'll be a fun discussion. But after Price and Bergeron, I'm not sure I see any that I feel like are real locks. And there's no Alex Mogilny in this class because for many years I was like, how is Alex Mogilny on in? I don't understand it. Like I think people are talking about Rod Brind'Amour, and Brind'Amour's as a player, his numbers were good, but I'm not sure there's anything about it that screams Hall of Famer as a player. Now, because he won as a coach, that would change things and maybe in a different category, and that's fine. Like I think you could probably make a better case for his coaching resume to get him in as a builder than a player.
Yes. See, he's a weird one, because how many times have you said, well, individually, I got to squint a little bit to fit them in. Like as a player, I got to squint a little bit on Brind'Amour. As a builder, I got to squint a little bit. But if you put them together, then yeah. I mean, Stanley Cup as a coach, same team, Stanley Cup as a player. You can't do it. You know what I'm getting at here, Jason? Like when you put the two things together about what he's been able to achieve with the Carolina Hurricanes, both as a player and as a coach, slide these two things together, and it's like, this guy's got to go into the Hall of Fame, but there's not a mechanism to do that. So it's either he's in as a builder or he's in as a player. Take your pick. And I think you need to do a little bit of squinting on both. But I do think you're right. Like I think as a coach, you can make a really strong case, even though he did win the Selke as a player as well. I'm with you about you don't need to put the full complement in. I know part of the Hockey Hall of Fame too is marketing of the game, and the more people, the better it is, and the more stories and the more coverage, and it's ultimately good for the hockey. Like we understand all of these things too, but I'll go back to one of the strongest classes that I ever saw. It's 1997. 2 players, Mario Lemieux, Brian Trottier, Glenn Sather goes in as a builder. 3 powerhouses go in, like no doubters. That's one of those like Hall of Fame classes you look at and you go like, yeah, like those are no doubters right in straight through. I think one of the more interesting things we're starting to wonder about now is what 29 is going to look like, right? So Kopitar is retired. Jonathan Toews most recently a few days ago packed it in. Jonathan Quick has retired this year as well. We're still waiting for an Alexander Ovechkin decision. And unless they're going to give, the all-time leading goal scorer of all time, the big wave to go into the Hockey Hall of Fame right away, like they've done with, I want to say 8 different players, starting with Dick Clapper a number of decades ago. Unless they're going to give that to Ovechkin, then he's going to be in that 29 class too. And Jaromir Jagr has already said, yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
What do you do with that class in 2029?
Well, if you have 4 guys, and I guess it's Ovechkin and it's Jagr and it's Taves and it's Kopitar, and then you kind of move on, right, from that. But
yeah,
I have a sneaking suspicion Ovi's coming back for a year. So I don't know why.
I wonder about that too. But don't you think like he needs to tell Chris Patrick what he's doing so the Washington GM will know what kind of money he has on July 1st?
Yeah, I would guess, Jeff, we will hear an announcement on Ovi before free agency. I think the announcement's going to be he's signing for 1 more year. That's just my hunch. I think, I feel that he's going to want to go out at least, having a shot at the playoffs. They've got lots of Washington's done a good job of kind of tooling their team. Like you look at a lot of their young players, man, and the Protas brothers.
Ross Mahoney.
Now, I like them, man. Yeah, I like their group. Now they got questions for sure, but I think Ovi's going to come back. I think he'd like to go out with at least one final playoff push.
Interesting with the Protas brothers. Both of those were trades at the draft, and both with the New Jersey Devils, right? And I talked to Ross Mahoney at the Combine, and one of the things that he said, because we talked about how difficult it is to sort of project players, and I was bringing up Tyler Myers. Like, you watched Tyler Myers in Kelowna, right? Like, there are some games you looked at him and you're like, oh man, this guy's incredible, surefire first-round pick. And then other games where it's like, and be on ice. And I remember talking to someone there, and it's like, oh yeah, he's going through a horrible growth spurt right now. It's like his body is like relearning the game, and then it all sort of comes together eventually. And what he said about Alexi Protas was like, yeah, the same thing, and that's what kept him out of like the first or the second round. Like that's what kept teams sort of away. And Ilya Protas is Zing way. But listen, whether it's Brian Leonard or Cole Hudson, like there's more good players coming. They've done a really good job. And that is Ross Mahoney. Background in scouting going back. I think this is his, what did he say? 28th draft. Ross Mahoney's 28th draft. Just a legendary scout from Regina. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I wonder about with Ovechkin, I've been on this one lately. I wonder if the issue isn't so much does he want to come back and here's the money that Washington has for him. Greg's, I wonder if the conversation is, and here's how you'll play. Here's how you'll fit in, and here's how you'll fit in on the power play. Because they've been running the same style of power play since Adam Oates was there. And that's the one thing that I wondered about the Capitals, if they would have made a play for Artemi Panarin. Overlap with Ovi for a year, and then all of a sudden the power play has a different look. Everybody just re-up with the team, as we all saw last week. I really do wonder if the conversation isn't so much about do you want to come back and how much money you make. I wonder if the conversation is deployment. How does Carberry want to use them? And is there still PP1 available for him? And how does he feel about playing power play too? I don't know.
I don't know if he. I look at his power play.
I don't know.
I'm still
I know.
Power play one. Like, they don't got guys better than him just because of his shot and how he reads the play and all that. But he might not be power play 1 for 2 minutes. That I think could be very possible. Moving forward for them. So, because, he didn't play a ton 5-on-5, and who knows, maybe he doesn't want it because he obviously, we'll see. But I look at it. Do you see anybody other than Price or Bergeron that you say, oh yeah, I'm very confident they would get their name called on one?
The one thing that I do wonder about, and I'm glad you mentioned his name, and that's Curtis Joseph. The one area that the Hall of Fame has done a really good job cleaning up is goaltending. because for the longest time, Griggs, you saw like every year, like goaltenders getting passed over. And they've deliberately, I don't want to say they've gone out of their way, but when someone proposes a goaltender or makes a presentation for a goaltender, it's getting a lot more concert now in the Hall of Fame than it ever has before. So I do wonder about Curtis Joseph. I wonder if Curtis could finally get in there. But is there one like I mentioned with 97, like Mario Lemieux, Brian Trottier, say they're in as a builder? Like, no. There's like really good players that I love. Man, I was a huge and still am Henrik Zetterberg fan. God, like when your best defensive player is your best offensive player, you don't lose line matchups. Like, go for it, man. But none of it screams like, Malkin. It's going right in. Like there's not about this group. I've banged the drum a million years now for Lauren Shabbat, but that one has always fallen on deaf ears too. So I'll make my yearly plea, just so I bring up the name. Lauren Shabbat should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Everybody who had complimentary and similar stats to Shabbat at that time, any of his contemporaries in that is in the Hall of Fame. Lauren Shabbat is not. So, but as someone in the Hall of Fame told me, Jeff, nobody here is old enough to have seen him play. So no, so I think the Lauren Shabbat ship is sailed.
All right. Before the draft, before you wrap it up, I know you talked to lots of teams. You had your, you went around to lots of different junior teams this year. So you're talking to lots of scouts at the junior level. Do you think we will see a top 10 pick traded, or are most teams going to say, no, I like my guy. We're going to go with our guy. And do you foresee is there a player out there that could be the most cider where no one talked about him? And when Detroit picked him, he went 6th, and obviously that turned out to be an unreal pick. Is there a player in your mind you think that can go and crash the party up in the top 8? That isn't talked about.
I love this question. And the answer to that one is yes. And that player is Malte Gustafsson. We've talked a lot about Carson Karls, and we've talked about Chase Reed, Daxon Rudolph. And there's been someone that's been coming on all season long, very quietly, but then towards the last couple of tournaments, U18, all of a sudden, all the scouts are like, whoa, this guy has taken a major leap in his game. I really do wonder if that player is Malte Gustafsson, defenseman. As far as trading a top 10 pick, I mean, I say yes every year, and I'm like always wrong. Teams try.
What is Vegas going to do? Because if they want to sign guys, they got to get rid of some guys. So I'm very intrigued to see what Vegas does. We mentioned Alex Tuch. That's another big name that we'll be watching over the next week to 10 days. I'm assuming he's going to test the market. You never know. It could come down to the wire. We've seen guys sign. Steven Stamkos, I think, June 30th, right before free agency signed. So it's happened before that at the end of the day, push comes to shove. They're like, no, I'm going to stay where I want to stay. So I think it's going to be a fascinating next 10 days.
One thing that I want to mention, and this winks back at our previous conversation, the Buffalo Sabres host the draft this year. If you look at, and I went back and I checked this out, in his history as general manager, including the move that we saw last week, Jarmo Kekalainen at the draft has moved up 16 times. And Buffalo's hosting the draft. And we're hearing all the talk about Bo Byram.
I was just going to say,
I don't ever put it past like the general manager of the host city to be the star of the show. And after the season the Buffalo Sabres just had as well, and you got a guy who moves up in the draft every single year, don't be surprised the Buffalo Sabres trying to pull something big here.
Oof. Be juicy. I love it. Yeah. Jeffrey, have yourself a great week. Happy Father's Day. Father's Day week, hopefully, to everybody. Again, that's the rundown brought to you by Bet365.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Marek, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.